5 weeks into the war in Ukraine, we don't even know the basic facts. According to Western media, the Ukrainian army has slowed down the Russian advance, inflicted spectacular casualties on the much better equipped Russians, and are now even pushing back the invaders. On the other hand, Russia said this week that the first stage of its operation has been accomplished. It also disclosed that 1,300 Russians have died so far in this war, versus NATO's estimate of somewhere between 7,000 to 15,000. For a war that has received more media coverage than any war ever fought, how can it be that we don't even know which side is winning and which side is losing? Hi, I'm David Wu, a former Wall Street global macro strategist with a 20-year track record of making actionable predictions of big global events. Welcome to part 1 of The Money Game, where I take on groupthink, propaganda, and conspiracy theories in my critical analysis of markets, politics, and economics. In today's video, I'm going to discuss 3 points about this war. 1, why I don't trust the media coverage of the war. 2, why I think the Russians are right to think that a total war is being waged against them by the United States. And 3, why I think the odds of a successful regime change in Moscow are very low, and what this means for the stock market. From the start of the war, the Western media has decided to judge the progress of the Russian invasion based on the speed of the Russian advance on Kiev. The fact that Russia has not yet taken Kiev 1 month into the war is widely seen as evidence of Russian failure and incompetence. Yet for this assessment to be correct, we have to assume that taking Kiev is a priority for Russian military planners. Yet there are no indications to suggest that this is the case. Kiev has a population of 3 million people. It is the 7th most populous city in Europe. Taking Kiev would involve urban combat that will neutralize Russia's advantages in the air and in heavy artillery. It is well known that many of the senior Russian officers in Ukraine cut their teeth in the Syrian civil war. If there's one lesson to take away from that brutal war, is the fact that the battle over Aleppo, Syria's largest city, went on for 4 years and ended only after 30,000 people were killed and 35,000 buildings were destroyed. So it makes no sense that Moscow will risk getting bogged down in Kiev. What makes much more sense is to surround Kiev, cut it off from the supply lines, while getting on with their stated objectives of the operation, which are the liberation of Donbass and the demilitarization of Ukraine. Regarding the liberation of Donbass, here's a map of the war from the French Ministry of Defense. They have established a continuous land bridge to Crimea, and they have cut off Ukraine's access to the Azov Sea completely. What about the demilitarization of Ukraine? At a briefing last week, the Russian General Staff main operational directorate head, Sergei Ruskoy, announced that Ukraine's air force and air defense system are now destroyed almost entirely. The country's navy has ceased to exist. He went on, the demilitarization of Ukraine is being achieved both with precision strikes on military infrastructure, military bases, aerodrome, command posts, arsenals, and military depots. These are very big claims that should be easy to verify. Yet searching through Western media, I couldn't find one single report of a Ukrainian ship sunk or a Ukrainian plane shut down since the start of the war. There is a complete blackout in the Western media of any news of Ukrainian setbacks. Why? Because there are none? Not that likely. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said this week that the West is engaging in a total war against Russia. 2 weeks ago, in a video called How Will This War End?, I explained why I think that Russia's war against Ukraine has morphed into America's war against Russia. More and more commentators are arriving at the same conclusion. A few days ago, Niall Ferguson, historian and senior fellow at the Hoover Institute, quoted a senior Biden administration official as saying that the only endgame now is the end of the Putin regime, meaning Washington's aim is to see Putin fall.
For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
For that to happen, we should assume that Washington will do whatever it takes to keep Ukraine in the fight. Last week, Biden announced that the U.S. will start sending Switchblade drones. These are kamikaze drones designed for U.S. Special Operation Command against tanks to Ukraine, along with more Stingers and more Javelins. What does this mean for the stock market? I think investors need to accept the grim reality that there is only one market positive outcome of this war, and that is if the US succeeds in removing Putin. Only when this happens will we see a rollback in sanctions that are imposing a collective punishment on the entire world economy right now. So what are the odds that Putin will fall soon? Let's say in 2022. In my view, the odds are low, very low. Many countries are starting to realize that if the US were to succeed in effecting a regime change in Russia, the same kind of crippling economic war could be directed in the future towards them. Last week, Indonesia, the fourth most populous country in the world and the current holder of the G20 presidency, invited Russia to attend the next G20 summit later this year over the objection of the Western members. The president of South Africa, another G20 member, blamed NATO expansion for the conflict in Ukraine in front of his own parliament recently.
War could have been avoided if NATO had heeded the warnings from amongst its own leaders.
Saudi Arabia, another G20 member, has refused to condemn the Russian invasion. The Saudi crown prince is said to have declined a call from Biden after speaking to Putin. Thanks to Saudi's resistance to US pressure to increase oil output, Putin can make the West share the pain of its sanctions against Russia. Brazil, another G20 member, has not condemned the Russian invasion and has criticized Western sanctions. President Bolsonaro, who met with Putin in Moscow just days before the invasion, vows to stay neutral on the war. Last week, India canceled the visit of a senior British delegation that was going to nudge New Delhi into taking a tougher stance on Russia. Finally, of course, China does not want to see a strengthening of the US rule-based order. I expect that Beijing will continue to support Moscow, even if it means defying the US. It is telling that China's foreign minister made an unscheduled visit to India last week, the first high-level Chinese official visit in 2 years. It looks like the two most populous countries in the world are finding common ground over the Ukraine conflict. All these countries I have mentioned, together with Russia, represent an economic bloc with real purchasing power bigger than the US, European Union, Japan, Canada, and Australia combined. It is not a coincidence that most of this bloc of countries are run by leaders with a nationalist streak. Xi in China, Modi in India, Bolsonaro in Brazil, Jokowi in Indonesia, and Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia. These leaders understand that the proxy war in Ukraine is a battle between globalism and nationalism, and they cannot afford to let Putin lose this war. 6 weeks ago, Biden still had time to pressure Ukraine into adopting constitutional neutrality to prevent this war. By not doing so, he has opened Pandora's box. Not only will the world never be the same again, it will be worse for everyone. That much I have no doubt about. If you got something out of this program, please hit like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to watch part 2 of this program, in which I discuss my investment strategy, including how to use currencies, stocks, and bonds to express this macro view and others, please come visit us at davidwuunbound.com.